It had scissor doors, mid-engine layout, sweeping spaceship curves, and brake lights that changed color depending on how hard you hit the pedal. It was powered by a rotary engine that sounded like a chainsaw and looked like it belonged in a sci-fi movie. But you couldn't buy it, you couldn't race it, and unless you were in Japan in 1970, you probably never even saw it. This was the Mazda RX-500, one of the boldest, strangest, most forward-thinking concept cars ever built. A car that could have put Japan at the center of the global supercar conversation, before Nissan, before Honda, before even the NSX. But it never had a chance. This is the story of the Japanese muscle car that America ignored, and why it just might be the wildest car Mazda ever built. The late 1960s and early 1970s were a fever dream for car design. In Italy, Bertone and Pininfarina were sculpting machines that looked like Art Deco spaceships. In the US, Dodge was strapping wings on Chargers and calling them Daytona. Even Germany, known for conservative engineering, was experimenting with wedge-shaped prototypes and exotic layouts. And then there was Japan, an industry still mostly known for small practical economy cars. But inside Mazda's design labs, something radical was brewing. By 1970, Mazda was already obsessed with rotary engines. They had licensed the Wankel design from NSU, refined it, and began installing it in cars like the Cosmo Sport and RX-3. But they weren't done. Mazda didn't just want to prove that rotary engines worked, they wanted to shock the world, and so they built a concept car. Not a future commuter, not a bubbly car, but a full-blown rotary-powered missile. The RX-500 wasn't just a car, it was a statement. The RX-500 debuted at the 1970 Tokyo Motor Show, part of Mazda's 50th anniversary celebration. And when the covers came off, jaws hit the floor. Imagine a low-slung wedge with a full canopy cockpit, butterfly doors that opened upward like a Lamborghini Miura, rear buttresses that tapered into horizontal taillights, a shape that looked like someone merged a Le Mans racer with a Star Wars X-Wing. But the styling was just the beginning. Mazda had mounted a midship-mounted 982cc twin-rotor 10A Wankel engine, producing around 250 horsepower in a car that weighed just 1,870 pounds. That gave it an estimated 0 to 60 time in under 6 seconds, performance that matched or beat the Corvette of the time. The RX-500 wasn't about top speed, it was about drama, noise, innovation. The entire body was made of lightweight plastic composites. The rear was modular, allowing quick removal for engine access. It had pop-up headlights, a rear diffuser, and even aircraft-style exhaust tunnels. This wasn't just a wild design study, it had engineering substance. One of the most bizarre and brilliant features of the RX-500 was its interactive brake light system. Instead of simple red taillights, the RX-500 had a color-coded display to indicate vehicle behavior to cars behind it. Green lights glowed when the car was accelerating, amber when cruising, red when braking. It was a dynamic communication system designed to improve safety on high-speed roads. A visual warning system that let other drivers react faster to your actions. Mazda claimed it could reduce rear-end collisions at high speeds, and in a way, they weren't wrong. Fast forward to today, and this kind of intense-based visual feedback is being revisited by EV companies and autonomous driving researchers. The RX-500 did it in 1970. Let's talk rotary. The RX-500 used Mazda's 10A twin-rotor engine, the same unit found in the Mazda Cosmo and early RX cars. While only displacing 982cc by volume, its effective performance was more like a 2.0-liter piston engine. Thanks to its high revving nature and compact packaging, Mazda could mount the engine directly behind the driver without compromising balance or weight distribution. And the sound? Utterly unhinged, high-pitched, rasping, loud, and aggressive, like a swarm of angry two-stroke dirt bikes. The rotary didn't thump like a V8 or growl like an inline-six, it screamed. Even in concept trim, the RX-500's power-to-weight ratio and acceleration were borderline exotic for the time. But the real highlight was how it delivered speed. Smooth, uninterrupted, and futuristic. And that fit the car perfectly. Everything about it, from the layout to the exhaust note to the driving feel, screamed different. If the RX-500 was so advanced, so fast, so visually groundbreaking, why didn't Mazda build it? The answer is brutally pragmatic. It was never meant to be sold. The RX-500 was a rolling test bed, a technology demonstrator, a marketing weapon. Mazda wanted to show the world it wasn't just building economy cars. They wanted to shake off the cheap Japanese car stigma and step into the spotlight as true innovators. And it worked. Sort of. The RX-500 made headlines in Japan. It impressed engineers. It signaled Mazda's commitment to pushing boundaries. But in terms of production planning, it was never on the table. No crash testing, no emission certification, no supply chain path for composite plastics or rotary mass production at that level. The global oil crisis was just around the corner. Safety regulations were tightening. Rotary engines were about to face massive scrutiny for emissions and fuel economy. In that environment, the RX-500 wasn't just too fast, it was too futuristic. Mazda quietly mothballed the prototype. 1 unit built. 1. It disappeared from public view for years. Today, the only RX-500 ever made lives in Mazda's private museum in Hiroshima, Japan, and for years it was forgotten. Stored, dust-covered, almost lost to time. But in recent decades, Mazda has restored it and displayed it at events like the Goodwood Festival of Speed, where it captivated a new generation of enthusiasts. And when you see it in person, it still looks like it belongs in the year 2100. The scissor doors, the canopy glass, the LED-like tail display. It makes modern hypercars feel safe by comparison. It's one of the few concept cars that still looks radical half a century later. And it runs. Yes, the engine fires. The car drives under its own power. It wasn't just a showpiece, it was, and still is, a functioning beast. Let's rewind the clock and rewrite history. Mazda greenlights limited RX-500 production. Builds 300 road-going versions using the Cosmo chassis as a base. Adds improving cooling, emissions tweaks, and a production-grade rotary. By 1972, Mazda becomes the first Japanese company to sell a true mid-engine exotic. Before the Honda NSX, before the Toyota MR2, before the Nissan MID-4. The RX-500 becomes Japan's Corvette, their Miura, their unicorn. It gets featured in American car magazines, stuns crowds at Pebble Beach, makes Mazda a global name not just for engineering, but for emotion. Instead, Mazda had to wait decades. They built legends like the RX-7 and RX-8, but they never again built a car this radical. They never got to swing this big again. The RX-500's influence didn't vanish. Its rotary heart lived on in Mazda's RX lineup, culminating in Le Mans' dominance with the 787B, the only rotary-powered car to ever win the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Its wild styling paved the way for Mazda's future design language. Bold, emotional, sleek. Its color-coded brake light system? That kind of intent-based signaling is being re-explored by autonomous car companies today. It's proof that no good idea really dies. The RX-500's impact wasn't felt in sales, it was felt in aspiration. The RX-500 matters because it represents a moment when Japan dared to dream bigger than the rest of the world expected. In 1970, Japan was seen as the maker of cheap cars, practical cars, small cars. And yet, here was Mazda, building a rotary-powered mid-engine, composite-bodied, color-shifting spaceship. It had no business existing, and that's exactly why it's important, because sometimes the best cars aren't the ones that win races or fill dealerships. They're the ones that show what's possible. The RX-500 didn't just break the mold, it ignored it, and in doing so, it became something more powerful than a product. It became a legend. The Mazda RX-500 was too fast, too weird, too advanced, and way too early. It had the soul of a supercar, the guts of a rotary experiment, and the design of a spaceship. But most of all, it had imagination. So next time someone says Mazda only ever built economy cars, or that Japan didn't have a true exotic before the NSX, tell them about the RX-500. Tell them about the rotary muscle car America ignored. Let me know in the comments, should Mazda have built it? Would it have changed the game? Or was it destined to remain a dream? And if you love forgotten legends, rotary rebels, and concept cars that never get their due, Hit that subscribe button because we're just getting started.